It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. And you're on the 8 Crazy Lights edition of Ask a Rabbi.
That, folks,
You got to put your mask on. I love that.
8 Crazy Nights.
That is awesome. Where did you get that mask?
I had it last year.
Boy, I'm so observant. I'm sorry.
Right, and candidly, I was hoping but not expecting that we wouldn't need it again this year. And for those who don't know it, I'm wearing a T-shirt that says Hanukkah 2020, checklist, dreidel, menorah, latkes, face mask. And, we had we are going to have a night of 10,000 lights. December 3rd, I think, is the first Friday in December. Not because it's first Friday, but because it is one of the last nights of Hanukkah. Hanukkah actually starts this year on Sunday. Not this Sunday, but a week from Sunday.
Boy, right on top of Thanksgiving.
Right on top of Thanksgiving. A couple of years ago, a couple of years ago, we joked about it being Thanksgivica because it was Thanksgiving on Thursday night, and I believe Friday night Hanukkah started that year. The only night that Hanukkah can't start is on a Tuesday. It's not because there's anything special about a Tuesday, but it's because that's the way the calendar works out in order for the other holidays to start on the days that they can start. Because once you put
Wait a minute, I'm totally confused. What? Why? What?
That's
day?
A bit of Jewish trivia.
Why Tuesday?
Only because that's how the calendar works out. Because Passover can't start on a Thursday.
Because of Friday. Yeah,
right.
I get that.
And there's other holidays that can't start on a Thursday for the same reason. Shavuot can't start on Thursday.
Gotcha.
But it also has to do, and Yom Kippur can't be on a Friday going into Shabbat. Right. Yom Kippur can be on Saturday, right? So it can start Friday night, or it can start Saturday night and go into Sunday. But it can't start on a Thursday for the same reason.
See, that's why Catholics always wanted Christmas on a Sunday, so you don't have to go to Mass twice. I'm sorry.
Okay, so now you're reminding me. Now you're reminding me of something that my friend Amy, the retired Methodist minister from Ohio, often quips about are the people who call when Christmas does fall on Sunday and say, are we having church today because it's Christmas? And it's like, okay. But, ironically, that was one of the subjects that I wanted to talk about today, because one of the things that I often hear from people, and it just, the religious part of me says, how can you do that? Which is when couples say to me, we celebrate both. We celebrate both Judaism and Christianity. And I'm like, you can't. You can't do both because you can't hold both sets of beliefs.
See, the mixed Jewish...
But there's a lot of mixed
Christian
marriages.
Customs.
Right.
There's
a lot of customs, and there's certainly holidays. But, for example, you can't celebrate Christmas as the birthday of Jesus in Judaism.
True.
Okay? If you're going to take the Christian understanding of Jesus, then you cross over the line and you're no longer Jewish. You might still celebrate some of the festivals in some fashion.
We have some friends that married, they're Jewish, that married a Baptist, and they it's interesting because they celebrate, the kids go to Hebrew school, yet they celebrate everything.
But the reality is they're not.
Yeah, well.
Right. So when somebody says to me they're Jewish and they do Christmas, they're not doing it as the birth of Jesus. Right. They're doing it as a tree and presents, which actually is the festival of Yule. Okay. It's actually not really Christmas, it's Yule.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Right. Because that is the seasonal festival.
Yeah.
That was indigenous when Rome came into that part of Europe. And Rome, as Greece did before it, grabbed different traditions and morphed them.
Damn Romans.
Well, many religions do that.
Yes.
Many religions do that.
Yeah.
And so, even, Judaism does it because when the temple is destroyed, we can no longer do the Passover meal as it would have been done. And so the rabbis in the first century changed the Passover observance from the traditional Passover meal into the Seder that we know today.
How long did it take that temple to be rebuilt? Is there anything?
It's
in the
never been
scriptures?
rebuilt, the one that the Romans destroyed.
Never has been.
It's never been rebuilt.
Oh.
That's
I
what
didn't know that.
there's a group in Israel that would like to do that. Right now there's a mosque on top of it and the Dome of the Rock on top of it.
Oops.
So it's a little more challenging because
a little.
Yeah, that's a slight.
A little.
It's more complicated. It's a complicated relationship.
Whoa. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's a very complicated relationship because it's not right to displace somebody. But that's why
So you can't do a multi-denominational temple?
well, that would be I think the perfect solution, but how do you do that without destroying the mosque en route?
Yeah.
Right? That's not exactly an expansion. That's
Right.
That's a lot more. And so, we'll leave it to God's time. And
Wow.
it'll work out in its own way. But that's one of the reasons for the current hostilities on the Temple Mount. When I was in Israel, when I lived in Israel many years ago, there was a big sign up that said Jews should not even go on the Temple Mount because we don't really know where the Holy of Holies was, and you should be careful walking up there because you might tread where you shouldn't.
Whoa.
Yeah, that sign's no longer there.
I would hope not.
So things change even within more recent decades, and certainly the kids coming up today don't remember that. They don't have that corporate memory. And that's an ongoing challenge. How do you transmit the reality into the current reality? And that's always been a problem.
So, okay, you bring up the kids today. Religion, it's funny, we had this discussion on the bus. Don't ask me how we get into these esoteric discussions with basketball players about the importance of religion in their life. And, man, it's very low on the totem pole.
Yeah, it's very low in Florida, which is kind of interesting. I think part of that has to do with the fact that this is a highly transplanted part of the world. And so people have left their family identities where they transplanted from. So, and I hear that when I talk with my students in class, and more so when I used to teach the religion classes, because then one of my questions at the beginning of the semester was always, do you practice the same religion that your parents practiced?
Great question.
And because, very often we practice what we're raised in just because it's what we know and it has primacy with us, right? So it's there as the foundation against which we judge everything else. And very often what the kids would say is, well, up north we used to be XYZ, but we couldn't find that kind of a church or whatever. And so we joined this other group when we got to Florida for whatever reasons. Sometimes it's marriage, sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's neighborhood, lots of different reasons. And so they've changed their identity, and in some cases that dilutes it. What I'm seeing, though, is that parents... I used to think this was a Jewish problem coming out of Europe, coming out of the Holocaust, out of Shoah, which was that when Hitler came and took largely the older generation, they took the people who were there to teach the grandkids and, destroyed them, literally. And the children themselves were taken very often on kinder transport and raised by others, sometimes reunited with their parents if their parents survived, and sometimes not. And
Wow.
so what you have is, in its own way, something like what we see happening with the indigenous religions when groups like America or Australia, when kids are put into these quote-unquote civilized schools.
Sure.
Right. What you're doing there is you're breaking the transmission of the sacred story. It very often is grandparent to grandchild, not because it has to skip a generation, but because the parents are working and the grandparents are done working, so they're at home taking care of the kids. That's a very organic family structure. And so the grandparents shape what the kids understand, what the kids experience.
I get that.
And so it appears to alternate generations because of that. And it's the kids that are intergenerational that bridge the information between generations.
I know when my father left and I was, 11, I guess, and my mom was working full time. Yeah, my grandparents really took a huge role.
That's very common.
Yeah.
And it's very common today. And it makes sense, right? You spend a generation, 20 years, working so that your kids will then be able to go and work and take care of you while you take care of their children.
Interesting. Yeah. By the way, I have to mention something. We talked about my old university in L.A.
Loyola.
Bringing in the Jewish, I'm not even sure, is it university or whatever?
Yeah, the American Jewish
Conference or whatever.
No, it's a university.
It is a university. Yeah, anyway. Long story short.
AJR.
There is a Catholic magazine that absolutely ripped that move. And, of course, as well predicted with the president of Loyola U, they basically said, stuff it. This is a private school. We'll do what we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting piece. It's emotions play a part in this game, and emotions are keyed to our identities, right? So if part of our identity is invested in the idea that we have the only right impression of God, then you're going to set yourself up for not getting along and playing well with others.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and you go back to as
my 6'9", yeah.
As we've talked before, back in the '60s, our Friday masses were with the Jewish rabbi and the imam, always.
Yeah.
And so you think, okay, this has been interdenominational for decades.
Yeah. Well, when I was a student rabbi, my first congregation in Cleveland, which has since merged with another congregation, so they're no longer there, but they actually worshipped in a building that was built to be a church and a synagogue, St. Albans. And the congregation there, ironically, was also called Eitz Chayim.
Really? Okay.
Eitz Chayim Ner Tamid, yeah.
You haven't traveled too far.
I haven't traveled too far, no.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's called Eitz Chayim. And inside the church, the church was literally built to be both. The front of the sanctuary had two doors that opened. If you opened the top, then there appeared this cross on the top of a beautiful tree. If you closed the top door, the cross was behind the top of the tree, and we opened a section of the tree that housed the Torah.
Oh, cool.
Right. So depending on which religion was practicing in the sanctuary at what time, then you could transform the building.
Now, was this part of St. Albans University?
I don't know. It was just a church.
So they're somewhere in the Midwest.
I'm not sure where they are.
Yeah.
And
wow, I love that idea, though.
Yeah. And instead of having a ton of crosses in the decorations of the church, or a bunch of stars
Sure.
There were just often birds and pomegranates and floral themes and things like that.
Generic.
Yeah, very generic,
no,
and it was
I
very
love
beautiful.
That.
And we had the sanctuary. We had a small chapel to the side that also was non-denominational, it's more than a denomination, but non-specific. And, we had all kinds of different rooms in the building to use.
So that was really forward thinking.
It wasn't our thinking. It was the founders of that organization.
I think that's awesome.
And there's a group in Boulder that I know that did the same thing, that built a Lutheran and a Jewish building together. And you're still going to run into Christians and Jews who'll go, no, we can't worship together.
Oh.
And, folks, if it's one God who creates one universe, it's the same God. So, and then you say, well, but Rabbi, you said that you can't be Jewish and celebrate the birth of Jesus. And that's true. Because that doesn't have to do with a creator in the same way.
Right.
Right.
No, I get that.
Yeah. Right. It has to do with the way Christianity perceives the Trinity. That's different. Doesn't make it a different God. It's a perception of that God. And so the example that I use in class is I draw on the ground a figure that, depending on which side you're standing on, one side it looks like a 6 and the other side it looks like a 9, and as Stuart likes to say, no, it's a balloon with a funny tail. And
okay.
Because. And just because. Right. And the point is that depending on which side of the figure you're standing on, it either appears as a 6 or a 9. It doesn't change what it is, quote unquote, on the ground.
Wow.
It doesn't change the figure, but it changes our perception of it. And so the reality is not that religions have a different God, but that we have different perceptions, understandings, and approaches to that one God. And if we recognize that it is one creator inside all of these religions, then we could be a little closer with each other.
That makes perfect sense, though. It seems like that's just common sense.
Oh, it would be. Oh, okay. Now, I closed this when I left the house.
Do you want me to open it?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to do that. Thank you, thermodynamics. What that is?
Wow.
Yeah.
We need one of those pot holders.
Well, it's because it warmed up and the glass expanded more than the metal did.
Now my hands are wet. I'll be back.
Okay, he'll be back. Sorry about that. So, coming back to it, we need to recognize that within all of our religions, there certainly is this one true God, one creator God, and then we attach things to that. We attach them. God doesn't attach it. And, there's more than one way to view that image on the ground. And are we not, in fact, just looking at perhaps images of God and etc.? God told Moses that he can't see God and live, that the best he can do is see where God has been. Right? He can see the evidence behind God, the trailing edge. And there's a Jewish tradition of what did Moses see, but in fact God's tefillin or prayer boxes that is traditional to wear for prayers in the morning. So it's an interesting piece. What do we see of God? We often can't recognize God in the moment when God is active in our lives, but we often recognize it after the fact, not during it. And it's just part of who and what we are and part of the human condition. And this is as good a time as any to mention that tonight is Third Friday, and we are once again going to be sponsoring the first responders with a hot meal, as we have almost every month for the duration of COVID, ever since that first Passover, which was right after we went into the shutdown. It feels so long, and it feels like we've been dealing with COVID for almost forever. And we'll see where it goes in the near future. But yeah, so the face mask is not undone, and for those who are in Facebook land, there's the 8 Crazy Nights. so you can see it. And I'll lay it out here so that Cliff can get a picture of it for the YouTube folks. Because that's another place you can see Ask a Rabbi is on YouTube. So there we go. Splice that in as well. So it is going to be Hanukkah in a few days. It's a little over a week from Sunday, which also, by the way, it starts Sunday night. So it's actually the first day is Monday. And we will be having our traditional monthly plant sale that weekend as well at the temple. And that's Sunday and Monday, fourth Sunday and the Monday after, from 1 to 5 p.m. And come see all the wonderful plants that we have. And I will give a shout out. One of our listeners last week called me and said that she might have some plants for us that she's going to bring in. And if not for this sale, then for the next one. And the one in December, in recognition of Christmas and a few other things going on, we are going to move the plant sale to the third week, December only. And that's just so that people who do want to get a plant for their loved ones and do it for Christmas can do that. Were you able to open it? Not yet. Okay. We're having this little nonverbal can we help you kind of thing here. And Cliff got it. Thank you, Cliff. Good muscles there. All right. So, yeah, I actually filled this with wonderful coffee that my husband Bill made, and then closed the cap. And, of course, so what happens is that there are different temperatures when I do that. That's one of the reasons that jars get hard to open.
See, I've never heard of stuff like that.
That's because you don't have an engineering degree.
Yeah, gotta ask my grandson about that.
Yeah, it's thermodynamics and it's material expansion. Different materials expand differently. Glass and it's also how dishes get stuck inside each other and things like that.
Yeah.
Right, because they go in at one temperature and then the temperatures change. And it may have slid down too far because one of the bowls was warm or hot. And things expand when they get hot and contract when they get cold, except for water, which expands as it freezes.
Okay, so now, you were involved in airplane tires. Speaking of expansion and contraction,
Yeah.
altitude must do some weird things to stuff like that.
Yeah, it does.
Wow.
It does.
Wow.
But, so that's why airplanes are pressurized. I just closed it and it did it again.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's telling me not to try to drink that. We're just going to give up on the coffee today. We'll deal with that later.
Oh, where's Cliff? Oh.
No, it's not worth it. We'll worry about it after the show. All right, so I did a plant plug, and I did a third Friday dinner plug for tonight, but the plant sale is not this Sunday, but next Sunday, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And yeah, this is not the first time that Hanukkah creeps up on Thanksgiving. It has to do with the calendar relationship between the Jewish calendar, which is a lunar calendar, intercalated into the solar calendar, and the Gregorian calendar set up, attributed to Pope Gregory, but in large part set up by Constantine. And again, I was thinking about that.
I'm glad my mother liked Gregory better than Constantine.
You wouldn't like to be called Constantine? A lot of syllables there. But there's a lot of syllables in Gregory.
Yeah, that's true, too.
All right. Actually, same number, just not as many letters. So, a little more common, Greg.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's... so, okay, I am going to digress for a moment. There's a wonderful bit of history out of 1971 when Durham, North Carolina, voted to integrate the schools. It had been it had come down federally, and Durham was the last part of North Carolina to finally integrate. It was the last major school district to integrate. And that integration effort was the combined efforts of C.P. Ellis, who was at the time the president of the local Klan, and Ann Atwater, who was a black activist woman.
Wow.
And the two of them end up together. What happens in the city of Durham is that one of the black schools burns. The black high school burns from an electrical fire. Okay, that happens. And they don't think that it's set. They think that it just happened because of the poor condition of the building and the poor maintenance. And when they are denied the right to come into the white school to finish up their education until the school can be rehabbed, then the NAACP comes in and files suit, right? Because that's really how local laws change. If the local legal system, the city councils in that group, and they were very white dominated at the time. Not only white dominated, but white. The whites in that town were very divided between those who were okay, quote unquote liberals,
sure.
versus the what we would call the far right.
Probably more conservative than liberal. Yeah.
And obviously the Klan is to the extreme end of that. And but when that comes down, the judge isn't willing to dictate because of the division in town. And so they create something called a charrette, which a person up in the northern part of North Carolina had led in a number of places. And that he happens to be black himself, and he comes into the town, and they create this group. And the way a charrette works is that you've got both sides of any issue,
right,
that meet and talk about it for 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how long it's set up, and then they generate resolutions. They vote on the resolutions. They create a council that votes on it, and a 2/3 majority is needed to pass any resolution, and then that resolution is then passed on to the city council, who, in this case, was legally bound by the judge to go ahead and implement what those resolutions were. And it's the story of how they work together, how they get to know each other, how they in fact become friends. So much friends.
Wow.
And the whole reason I talked about that was your Constantine probably wouldn't be called Connie or something like that. A woman might, from Constance, or Constanta, which was actually Constantine's sister. So it could be worse.
Whoa. There's that curveball.
But C.P. Ellis's first name was Claiborne, another name that's not often used, and so he used C.P., his first two initials, which is where that was going. But the end up of that story, and you can find the documentary of it, it's called Best of Enemies. And it talks a lot about prejudice and how to break them down. And the charrette does a lot of that. C.P. Ellis and Ann Atwater became very close and very bonded, so much so that when C.P. Ellis died in 2005, Ann Atwater delivered the eulogy for him.
Whoa. That's
right. So
how did the other weirdos in the audience feel?
That's
their problem.
Yeah, I'm sure some were okay with it, some were not. And it's the old story. It depends on how you choose to identify yourself. It's a choice. And one of the things that comes out of it, C.P. Ellis, and we talked about this actually in my class just this week, he didn't join the Klan as much because of his hatred of blacks and Jews and communists, which is the triumvirate that they claim to be against, but because he wanted to belong to something bigger than himself. So it was that sense of belonging and significance.
Family.
Mm-hmm.
It's like gangs.
Right. And it was above and beyond the caring for his 3 kids and his wife, which he had, but he wanted that to him wasn't bigger than him. We could argue that it might have, ought or should have, but that's for each individual to deal with. But he wanted to belong to something that he thought was significant and powerful. And of course the Klan, by virtue of terrorism, and let's call it what it is. And they've got some wonderful scenes of that where they're intimidating. They intimidate a woman who's dating a black guy. They intimidate one of the voters on one of the council, and they successfully intimidate her. And it shows how they break into her house and violate. They don't rape her, but there's the threat of it. And they even put their terror on C.P. Ellis himself when he votes yes for integration, because he is the deciding.
He's the enemy.
He was the deciding. Well, he tears up his Klan membership, and he's the president. He's the Cyclops of the year in the state at the time when he does this. And so it's a very significant move. And his comment is that, blacks serve in the military, blacks do good things for other people, blacks are people. And you see him coming to recognize this and realize it through the unfolding of the movie. It's a very powerful movie. And at the end of it, they have an interview with C.P. Ellis and with Ann Atwater. They're real people. And Ann Atwater passed in 2016, so not that long ago. And it's the story of how and what they did and how that interconnected. So, but what they do to C.P. Ellis, he's not a rich man. He's actually very poor. And he's poor. There's a couple of interesting little vignettes there too. He runs a gas station. He runs a one-pump little, Durham gas station.
I get it.
And there's a line in there where his wife is chiding him and saying, why will you only sell to half a Durham? And his answer to her is, how would it look for the president of the Klan to sell to black folk? Okay. And so he only sells to basically the far right that support his view, because the liberals are not going to support it either. And so he's isolated and given himself a very small segment to sell from. And what they do is they open up one of the gas lines and they torch it so that it's burning. It burns off 650 gallons of gas. And the guy from Pure Oil, which company he's with, asks him if he wants to buy replacement gas. And he says, let me wait and see. I can always call you. Because he doesn't think that his far-right customers are going to come anymore after he's voted for segregation. And he is truly facing family economic destruction by his support. But Ann Atwater organizes all of the blacks now to come and buy gas from him, and now he sells. And it shows the line of cars. And
cool,
it's
that's
cool.
great.
It's cool to see all those 1970 vintage cars, too, in the movie.
Boy, that's one event
Best of Enemies.
Never registered. Yeah, I've got to go.
It's a great film. Here's the other plug. Netflix has it if you're a Netflix customer. I don't know if Amazon has it, and I don't know if Paramount and all the other groups have it. But I've watched it on Netflix. So it's a very powerful movie, 2 hours and a couple of minutes. So it's a... Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's a big deal. And what it shows... So I show it from a lot of different vantage points. I show it from philosophy changing. I show it from psychology, the psychology of stereotyping, and how we can break down our stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an interesting piece between C.P. Ellis and one of the other council members who's considered a real liberal because he owns a hardware store. He again is struggling for an income, as many shopkeepers do. And his manager and a lot of his employees are black. And C.P. Ellis sees him at a ball game where I guess C.P.'s there for his son playing in the game. And he sees the guy standing off to the side watching the game and comes over with a beer to basically to sound him out and perhaps convince him to vote with the White Alliance, if for lack of a better word, and but instead they have a talk. He legitimately opens up and listens to him, and he learns that the guy is a veteran, and he makes one comment about your manager is black. How can you trust him? I can't trust any black folks. And the guy looks at C.P. Ellis and says, I trust him as much as I trust my family. And you get this astounded look on C.P. Ellis's face, and he looks at me and says, we served in Vietnam together.
Yeah. It's in the same foxhole together.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you bet.
I've trusted him with my life repeatedly. We have each other's back. So of course I trust him to run my store. And as CP's walking, and CP says to him, thank you for your service. Because CP himself has never been in the military, but he recognizes the dedication and gift to the country that military people give. We give up our rights when we're military, basically to defend to defend others who practice their rights.
It was very interesting back in the day when I was working at the grocery chain in Los Angeles, and we had a very southern produce manager who hired mostly blacks. And we were talking, and he said how prejudiced he was when he grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. But then he was saved in Vietnam by a black corpsman.
Yeah.
And he said that day changed my entire life.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good thing. That's a very good thing.
Oh,
absolutely.
yeah.
And so, again, when the two of them are talking and CP goes to walk away, the guy says, CP, my manager was in Vietnam and a veteran, too.
Oh, there you go.
Right. So,
sure.
And you can see CP thinking about these things. And it's a very powerful movie. I highly recommend it. And the other thing that we watch in the class is a documentary done on the work of Jane Elliott, who did a very famous experiment in Iowa where she took her third graders and divided them up into brown eyes and blue eyes. And on Tuesday, the blue eyes are on top and the brown eyes are bad. And on Wednesday, this gets better. The Wednesday, the brown eyes are on top and the blue eyes are on the bottom. And there's some great lines out of that too. That's called I think it's A House Divided is the name of that. But if you Google the Jane Elliott blue eyes, brown eyes, it'll come up for you. And there's a wonderful documentary. PBS did one. They came in the third year that she ran this experiment. She started running it when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated. And
68.
Yeah, that's when she started it. And in 71, same time, PBS came in and videoed the experiment, and you can see the kids. And one of Jane Elliott's comments is that she, in the course of 15 minutes, she watched wonderful, loving, cooperative third grader children become mean, nasty, prejudiced third graders.
Wow.
Yeah. And it doesn't take long. And there is nothing in that part of Iowa. There is not a whole lot of black population.
No.
And so, she's dealing with that. How do you create an us and them in an all-white class?
Well, we found that out in Kansas. It was so weird that, when we walked in together, there were a lot of eyes in the restaurant like, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
We're sitting down to eat, folks. Thank you.
Yeah. There are some parts of the world where things still are, unfortunately, much more segregated than perhaps they should be. God made us all.
Out.
God made us all in God's image.
Yeah.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts or contingencies on that. Find me a reference in Genesis where it separates, and it doesn't. We're all from Adam and Eve. That's the Judeo-Christian version, and you'll find a similar story everywhere. Everybody starts from one pair. Yeah, it makes sense. It even makes evolutionary sense, because it's all going to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
What can I say? And, who are we to know why skin color changes, eye shape changes? It's probably a local thing over millennia. And no, that doesn't interfere with the 7-day week of creation, because the sun, moon, and stars are not created until Wednesday. You can't measure a day before you got sun, moon, and stars. So clearly, it don't mean it doesn't mean what we understand a day to mean.
So where was the Garden of Eden?
Well, it tells you that it's the confluence of the great rivers.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that would put it kind of like in a Asian part. And Abraham Abraham comes from Ur of the Chaldees, and science now is indicating that might well be one of the places where life started. And part of that has to do with the rivers that flood regularly so you can grow food. It all makes sense. And then we migrate all over. And it's part of why our Alaskan indigenous Inuit look a little bit Asian.
Gee, you think?
Yeah, you think? Why American Indians look a little bit Asian, you think? Yeah. Called a land bridge.
Yeah.
Right.
No, truly, yeah. Yeah, it's very funny. I've seen some documentaries on the tribe up in Alaska, and they're fascinating.
The whole group of humans that live up on the upper, the subarctic, they're amazing how they've eked out and thrived in that crazy hostile environment.
Oh yeah.
It's not hard to see how somebody in Hawaii can survive and be laid back, because, you roll over and knock the tree and the coconut falls out of it. Right? Or you reach up and you grab a banana or a papaya or whatever, the things that grow. So, you can be a beach bum and sleep on the beach.
Doesn't happen in the Arctic Circle.
But yeah, in the Arctic Circle, that's not going to work. And that was kind of an aha for me. Why are people laid back in Florida, particularly southern Florida, and even more laid back in Hawaii? It's because they don't have to work hard, and they don't have a scarcity of resources as a result of it. Right? The further north you get, if you don't work and hoard, if you will, if you don't store food for the winter, then as a non-hibernating creature, we're going to starve. And that, in fact, happened to the Pilgrims. Many of them starved over the winter and were not prepared for the harsh winters of New England.
In Los Angeles, we never even heard of canning things.
Well,
unless we were talking to relatives in some other part of the country that had to do that.
Yeah. Or you did it because you wanted to do it, like make jelly out of
you could be
prickly pear cactus flowers.
Yeah.
Right.
But I get that,
But storing food because you have to have it for the winter, or right in the days of no refrigeration, and if you canned it improperly, it became unusable. Hello, right? Many problems associated with it.
Yeah, but you think of those the Aleutian tribes, and how they would.
Well, and how they move
food underground,
because
it's frozen.
Yeah,
and that's their version of a freezer.
A freezer, right?
Yeah.
Right. You put stuff in the freezer to warm it up.
True.
But as you know, in Tucson, it does get cold.
Well, 2 days a year.
And it can snow. It can snow for a whole day.
I know. Yeah.
It looks really pretty in the mountains too, by the way.
Yeah, it does. It does.
It is gorgeous
in
the mountains.
Up there too.
Yeah. And if you're going to go up Mount Lemmon in the winter and it's snowing, you will need chains.
Yep.
But then you come down to Tucson and it melts within a day. I have seen snow on top of my cacti. Excuse me, cactus.
Not for long.
Not for long.
Not for long.
Saguaro looks really great with a snow cap on it, but actually that's dangerous for the saguaro. A lot of people put little caps on their saguaro because if the growing crown freezes, it can actually stunt the cactus.
Oh, I never knew that.
Saguaro cannot take freezing. So when it's they can take it in the body, but they can't take it on their crown. So that works really well for this time of year because a lot of people put little Christmas caps on top of them.
Yeah, yeah.
That's part of why. It's not just to be cute, although it is very cute. Right. And it astounded me the number of people who can wrap lights on those things.
Yeah. I can't even comprehend that.
Well, that, and I watch the birds sit on them. It's like, how did you, and you can tell when they're learning because they're kind of like, ooh, I didn't do that right.
What did I just sit on?
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And they do. Wow. They learn to land on them. For those who've never seen a saguaro, it's Saguaro. Look it up, saguaro.
It's not Sagaro.
No, it's not Sagaro, and it's not Saharo either.
Right, exactly.
And so you can look that up, saguaro.
Yep.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful cactus, and it grows in the Sonoran Desert. And they have a smaller version of it in the Caribbean. And it's a relative of the saguaro.
Friend of ours is retired. Well, he was going to retire from the Houston Astros, and Puerto Penasco, which is right just south of Tucson. It's right on the Gulf. He and his wife are retiring there, and it's beautiful.
There are some beautiful areas. Green Valley is gorgeous.
Yes,
Green Valley is spectacular.
Yep.
And I see that place growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, a lady that Carol worked with, that we worked with in San Diego and Boston, is retired there.
There's another cool thing right by Green Valley, which is the old missile site that you can go and see. They've made a museum out of one of the old silos.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you can go see how people lived in the 50s when everybody was afraid of a nuclear war.
That would be probably on the left side of the road as you head to Mexico?
Maybe? I don't remember.
There,
it's somewhere in the mountains. Bill was driving, so I confess I wasn't paying as much attention to the
wow. See,
the
I didn't
directions.
realize we had missile silos there. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Lots of things go on in the Tucson area that, never mind. Lots of interesting airports in that area.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So the CIA airport in Marana. Yeah.
What? Where? Who? What?
Yep. Yep. Oh, boy.
So it's always fun with it. Never mind.
There's a lot of strange goings on in the deserts.
You think?
Just a lot.
Yeah.
Very intriguing. So let's get back to your plant sale next week.
Yeah. So we're going to be having another one of our classic plant sales with a buy 3, get 1 free. We've got some interesting succulents that are different, and got some interesting plants from a couple of different places that I didn't expect to. Another one from Rich Hall down in Stewart. He gave me some wonderful plants from, I think it's Lone Pine or Long Pine Nursery on Salerno. So a quick yell out for him.
Thank you, Rich.
Yeah. Rick.
Okay.
And cool. So we'll see what I have from that, but he has some really cool things that he gave me a few of. We won't have a lot from there, but we'll have a lot of variety. A really, really pretty, bright red, fall colory, deep orange, deep red, coleus.
So are you going to have any menorahs?
We could bring some menorahs. Well, there are certainly menorahs in the temple, but we can have some menorahs there.
That'd be cool. So that is day 1 of...
That night will be day 1.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll be light. We'll go home from the plant sale Sunday night. We'll probably light some right there at the temple at the end of the plant sale.
That's cool. Yeah.
And then go home and light again. Last year I did all the lighting on Zoom. I'll probably do that again this year. Because we're still not ready to have, 2 years ago we lit the candles at the community center in the plaza.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll be doing, and we had latkes and we had jelly donuts and all of the wonderful fixings, and kids had crafts, but I don't think we're going to do that again this year.
Not this year.
Not this year. Not yet. God willing, next year.
We said that last year.
I understand.
I know. No, I know. I get it.
Yeah. I'm waiting for a version of this T-shirt to come out with the 0 crossed off and a 1 marked on
And a
it.
1?
Yeah. I may get some fabric paint and do that myself.
Oh, that's funny.
Make it current.
It's not funny. It's
It's not
tragic.
funny. It's tragic, and we all know people who've
Oh, yeah.
been affected by it dramatically, and the number of people who have long COVID, something people truly had no idea would happen. Long COVID being the COVID that hangs with you and isn't just a bad flu.
No.
Right, there are some people who are still suffering from leftover conditions, not to be taken lightly. So I hope that if you haven't, if you haven't been vaccinated yet, please, for your sake and the sake of your family, get vaccinated.
That's what Stuart was talking about, too, a couple weeks ago. It's like, the whole unvaccinated is part of your civil rights and stuff. It's, I don't get it.
Well,
it's become so political, it's ridiculous.
Kids have to be vaccinated to go to school.
Right.
People have to be vaccinated for many jobs. I always had to be vaccinated to work at a hospital. I had to be vaccinated to get the flu shot.
Yeah, to be vaccinated in the service.
In the military.
You just stick your arm out.
You just walk down the line and it's boom, 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 boom.
That's right.
And you get shot after shot after shot.
I remember that.
And there's no exemptions. It's, line up and get shot.
Or else.
Yeah, or get shot.
Or get shot. Yeah, there was no fooling around on the shot day.
And, okay, I'm fully vaccinated. I've had my booster shot. We would hear a lot more if there were a lot of reactions. There just aren't. So my final wish is for everybody, have an absolutely safe, wonderful, happy Thanksgiving. May everybody have certainly enough and even more than enough. Let us all be thankful that we do have the ability to change our minds and grow. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world on Alexa, Google Home, and TuneIn worldwide.